You don't know the silence of the world until you've heard the soil speak. It's not a sound you hear with your ears. It's a vibration that travels up through the soles of your shoes, a low, grinding hum that settles in the marrow of your bones. I learned that the summer I took the job as the night watchman at Oakhaven Memorial. They called me the caretaker. But the old groundskeeper, a man named Eli with eyes like cracked porcelain, he called me something else. The first night, he handed me a heavy flashlight and a ring of keys that felt like ice. "Listen, boy," he'd whispered, his breath smelling of mint and decay. "You walk the lines. You check the gates. You ignore the sounds that ain't right. But if you see him, you stop. You stand still as the stone you're standing on." "See who?" I asked, a smirk playing on my young, stupid lips. Eli's gaze didn't waver. "The Cemetery Keerer. He ain't a ghost. He's the reason the ghosts stay quiet." He left me with that, and I'd laughed it off as an old man's superstition. My job was to deter vandals, not fear some fairy tale monster. The first few nights were just quiet, profoundly, overwhelmingly so. The kind of quiet that presses on your eardrums. I'd make my rounds, my flashlight beam cutting a lonely path through the avenues of the dead. I'd hear the rustle of an animal in the rhododendrons, the sigh of the wind through the mausoleums. Normal things. Then, on the fourth night, I heard the first wrong sound. It was a scraping, not the skitter of a raccoon or the scratch of a branch. This was deliberate, a slow, grating drag, like something heavy being pulled over granite. My blood went cold, not with fear, but with a sudden, primal awareness. Vandals, I thought. This is what I'm here for. I followed the sound, my steps cautious, my flashlight off. The moon was a sliver, offering little light. The scraping led me to the oldest section, where the angels wept green-stained tears, and the dates on the stones were worn smooth by time. The sound was coming from behind a massive, ornate tomb, the Aldrich family mausoleum. I peered around the corner. There was no one there. The scraping had stopped, but the air was thick and sweet, like turned earth and rotting flowers. And the ground in front of a fresh grave little Timothy Aldrich, age 7, laid to rest just 2 days prior, was disturbed, not dug up. It looked rumpled, as if the earth itself had tossed and turned in its sleep. I turned my flashlight on, sweeping the beam across the graves. Nothing. I was alone. I wrote it off as my imagination, a product of Eli's spooky story and the late hour. But it happened again the next night, and the night after, always in a different section, always around a recent burial. A low, wet sound of earth compacting, the faint, melodic clink of a trowel striking a hidden rock. Once I saw a figure, just a flasher, tall, impossibly thin silhouette, stooped over a grave, its outline seeming to drink the moonlight rather than reflect it. I blinked, and it was gone. I told myself it was a trick of the shadows. I stopped telling myself that on the 7th night it was raining, a fine, misty drizzle that made the world gauzy and unreal. The beam of my flashlight was a solid white rod in the gloom, I was checking the eastern gate when I heard a soft, humming vibration that seemed to rise from the ground itself. It was a tune, but not one made by a human voice. It was the sound of roots twisting, of stones settling, of worms moving through the dirt. It was the soil singing, and it was coming from little Timothy Aldrich's plot. I moved toward it, compelled by a dread I could no longer deny. The singing grew louder, a dissonant, grinding lullaby that made my teeth ache. I rounded the corner of a hedge and saw him. The Keerer. He was tall and gaunt, his back to me, clothed in what seemed to be a shroud of packed earth and tangled root. He wasn't digging. He was kneading. His long, thin fingers, pale as grubs and just as segmented, were sunk wrist deep into the soil of Timothy's grave. His shoulders shifted and rolled as he worked the earth, like a baker working a stubborn dough. The terrible, grinding hum was coming from him. I must have made a sound aghast, a choked breath, because his movements ceased. The humming stopped. The silence that followed was louder than any noise. Slowly, with a sound like pulling roots from mud, he withdrew his hands from the earth. He began to turn. Every cell in my body screamed to run, but Eli's warning echoed in my skull. You stop. You stand still as the stone you're standing on. I froze. He faced me. He had no face. Where his features should have been was a smooth, pale expanse of clay, unmarked by eyes, nose, or mouth. Yet I felt a regard, a scrutiny more intense than any stare. It peeled me back, layer by layer, looking not at my skin, but at the core of me, at the memories and fears and regrets that I'd buried as deeply as any corpse. He took a step toward me. He didn't walk. He unfolded, his legs moving with a brittle, jointed grace that was all wrong. The sweet, rotten smell washed over me, and I understood its source. It was the scent of grief. Pure, undiluted sorrow given a perfume. He raised one of his pale, digging hands. In the palm, he held a lump of dark, rich soil. It pulsed with a soft, internal light, and within its glow, I saw flickers a toy boat, a mother's smile, the terror of a dark room, the searing pain of a fever, Timothy's memories, his essence. The Keerer was not tending the grave. He was tending the soul, compressing it, refining it, keening it. He extended his hand toward me, offering the pulsing clod of earth, an invitation, a demand. To take it would be to understand, to feel everything that boy had been and would never be. It would shatter me. I did the only thing I could. I broke, I ran without looking back, the sound of my own terrified sobs echoing in the silent cemetery. I didn't stop until I was locked in the Watchman's shack, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I quit the next morning. I gave Eli back his keys. He took one look at my face and just nodded, his porcelain eyes full of a grim understanding. He didn't ask. I didn't tell. I tried to forget. I moved cities, got a job in a bright, loud factory surrounded by living people. For a while, I almost convinced myself it was a stress-induced hallucination, a nightmare. But the cemetery doesn't let go that easily. It started with the dreams, not dreams of him, No, that would be too simple. I dreamt I was standing in a field of perfect, silent grass under a starless sky, and I'd kneel, and my hands would sink into the soil, and I'd feel it the countless, countless souls beneath me. I'd feel their joys and their pains, their loves and their losses, all packed down tight and silent. And a tune would rise in my throat, not my own. That same grinding, root-twisting lullaby. I'd wake up with the taste of soil on my tongue. Then, the waking moments. I'll be walking down the street, and I'll step on a patch of bare earth between slabs of concrete, and for a fraction of a second, my foot doesn't hit dirt. It sinks, and I feel that hum, that vibration, that call. Last night, I couldn't sleep. The air in my apartment was stifled. I went for a walk, ending up in the small city park, a place with a few trees and a manicured lawn. I sat on a bench, head in my hands, fighting the urge to just lie down on the grass. That's when I saw him, across the park under a street lamp, the same gaunt, tall figure. He wasn't looking at me. He was standing over a spot of earth where a dog was buried by some grieving child, a small cross marking it. His pale hands were buried in the ground, his shoulders working in that same rhythmic, kneading motion. He was keening, here in the world of the living. He finished his work, withdrew his hands, and stood to his full, terrifying height. Then he turned his smooth, featureless face toward me. He didn't move, he just waited. And I felt it, again not fear, but that profound, pulling awareness. The soil was speaking. It was telling me its secrets. It was showing me my purpose. I look at my hands now. They seem pale in the glow of my computer screen. The world outside is too loud, too bright, too full of shallow, unburied thing. It scratches at me. But the silence, the deep, sweet silence under the grass, it calls. It sings my tune. I understand now what Eli knew. The Keerer isn't a monster. He's a function, a need. The earth requires its quiet, and grief must be tended to, compressed into something manageable, something that doesn't scream. Someone has to do it. The call is getting stronger. I can feel the vibrations through the floorboards of my second-story apartment. It's not a question of if I'll go back. It's a question of which cemetery I'll choose. And I think I have a candidate. The old maple tree in the park. The ground there seems soft, ripe with sorrow. It needs a Keerer. It needs me. Listen, can you hear it? Right now. Wherever you are, stop. Be still as stone. Listen past the traffic, past the hum of your appliances. Listen down through the foundations, through the concrete and the pipes. Listen to the soil. It's humming.